Hello and welcome. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me today during the webinar. I just want to do a quick sound check since I'm doing this from my house. If you're able to share with me in the chat or the questions, could you just let me know if you can hear me okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Please forgive some noises as we're all adapting to this at-home learning and working. I live here with my 3 children and my teacher husband, so we're pretty busy and might be a little bit loud. So I apologize if it gets a little noisy. Please let me know. So I want to get started today. Thank you again for joining. We will be talking about the Texas Resource Review, and many of you received an email from myself or another member of the review and adoption team or Texas Resource Review, and probably while you're here today. So we'll have opportunity to go over the Texas Resource Review process. We will then be able to share how we select products for review and hopefully answer some questions. We'll explain some opportunities and options for publishers during the review process, go over the requirements and upcoming deadlines, and there will be an opportunity at the end for me to answer some questions. If I'm unable to answer questions during this time, I will get back to you, as well as be posting the webinar when we're finished in the next couple days. So to get us started, I really wanted to talk, first of all, we have many new people to this, but the Texas Resource Review actually came out of 2017 legislation in which the Texas Education Agency was really tasked with creating an instructional materials portal for the purpose of supporting local education agencies, districts, public charter schools and such with the selection of quality materials and helping them have the right information. This was in addition to what we already have in place through the State Board of Education, which is an adopted state list that occurs after usually we have a revision of our standards, and then there's a call for a proclamation. However, with the quality review, we're going beyond the percent alignment or correlation to the standards and really get into very specific aspects of products to provide detailed information for our local education agencies. The Texas Resource Review was born out of this legislation and really is designed to provide clear and user-friendly information about the quality of instructional materials by gathering evidence from teams of Texas educators that have been trained across the state to provide just great detail into products that many districts try to do at the local level. However, we're leveraging this at scale to provide more detail and the time element for districts to get what they need in order to purchase what's best for them. A little bit about the quality review process. We start by developing a rubric. This rubric is developed in coordination with Texas educators and is aligned to our Texas standards. So it's very specific to our needs here in Texas. The rubric, we currently have several rubrics on our website, which I'll show you in just a moment, that we're able to review products. And so we have rubrics that review K through 2, English language arts and reading. We have 3 through 8, another rubric for high school, English language arts and reading, our pre-K systems, math K-8, and now foundational literacy. We're also in the development of some new rubrics and looking to put those out for public comment pretty soon, in which publishers also have an opportunity to comment. Those rubrics that we're developing right now are to review Spanish materials. And so we are hoping to have those out early next month, and that way you would have an opportunity to look at those. Once the rubric is developed, we keep it stable for a time period before the reviews start, as well as throughout the review process, to ensure that we're clear about what is being evaluated, and there's just a lot of transparency regarding how we are looking at materials. To begin our actual review process, we select review teams. This is an extensive recruiting and application process in which reviewers are selected from all over the state. We encourage educators, leaders, those in the content areas to be able to apply, and then they are selected through a staged process in which they have interviews until we make our teams. We only accept Texas educators, so you have to live in the state of Texas, and we look for people who have been in the field, but it can vary in years of experience. On each team, we have teams of 5, and on each team we do make sure that we have a great diversity as far as across the state, the types of districts, large, small, urban, suburban, and rural. And then also look for qualifications in which we have educators that have a specialty in special education as well as ELs, so that we are getting a diverse perspective across the team. The next step in actually beginning the review is we have an evaluation of the standards alignment. For products that have already gone through a proclamation and were reviewed and currently are on a state adopted list, we use those evaluations that have been already done. Or if you've submitted to Proclamation 2021 for pre-K systems, it's the same process. We always are going to start with an evaluation of the standards, either the TEKs, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or in the case of kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, we have our Texas pre-kindergarten guidelines, as well as alignment to our English language proficiency standards, or our ELPS, and therefore we have a percentage. So that's part of the proclamation. So products that are submitted for that would be able to go through that process and get the percentages that are then posted for school districts. And there's some requirements around that. However, we have some other products that are not part of the proclamation list. Our foundational literacy have not ever been called for before, but these supplemental products, so this is new. We will still do a standards alignment check to ensure that we're providing information. However, we'll talk a little bit more with foundational literacy, but it may only be a subset of standards depending on the rubric we're using. So in foundational literacy specifically, we are only looking at strand 1 of our TEKs and not the whole comprehensive. After we have our standards alignment done, we then have products that go through an extensive review of quality. Our review teams spend hundreds of hours digging into the products, getting very intimate with the products, looking at and finding evidence using the rubrics to determine if an indicator is met, partially met, or not met. and must provide evidence to support that claim. Those review teams have to come to consensus on the scoring as well as the evidence that they're providing, so that we can ensure that products are fairly reviewed for quality. Once a review has been completed, so the rubric, all the indicators have been reviewed and evidence collected, we then send to publishers a draft of this quality review. Publishers have an opportunity to respond by either making an appeal, requesting to have, such as you think that we didn't find a particular indicator or evidence of that indicator and may point that out. You also have the opportunity to say, we think you missed this, or you're not understanding the product in some way. And then that information is sent back to reviewers to re-look at. Once everything has gone through the appeals process, we then finalize the reviews. During that time, we have a validation or verification done by our education service centers, where they ensure that the evidence provided validates the claim that is there. And so they're determining if there's enough evidence to support if the indicator was met, partially met, or not met. And then lastly, once the reviews are completely finished, we publish them on our Texas Resource Review website. And publishers also have an opportunity to submit a response, which we will publish alongside the reviews. Materials themselves and how they are able to be submitted. Making sure you can see this okay. The material submission for quality is that publishers can voluntarily submit through our application process. So products that may not have been on the state review, or you would like to be able to work here in Texas and want to have greater visual appearance in the state, you can submit your product voluntarily. If the SBOE, our State Board of Education, requests materials be reviewed for quality, then we will review products, consider them for our Texas Resource Review. And then lastly, if 10% or more of districts request a quality review, we would review that product, seeing it as high priority for districts. So this next, moving along. This next slide is really to show you the review cycle. We have been working with you, sent out some information as far as different requirements during this time period up till the beginning of June. We'll be collecting various pieces of information to prepare for our quality reviews. And then the review for the June 2020 cycle will start about mid-June, and it will last all the way into November, in which we will then publish all the reviews alongside the state board list for pre-K systems. This summer, we are prioritizing reviewing pre-kindergarten, Math K-8 products, not all of them, but some Math K-8 products, and then our ELAR Foundations supplement. This is really to focus on that systematic phonics instruction in response to HB3 requirements, and therefore we created a new rubric last fall to be able to look at supplemental programs that are focused on foundational reading and writing skills. The requirements, just to go over with you, pre-kindergarten is part of the proclamation. So if you submitted to Proclamation 2021, we are going to review as per the recommendation from the State Board of Education, and as well as having some products that are voluntary submitted. If you voluntary submitted and were not part of Proclamation 2021, you will not be on the state adoption list, but you will in our EMAT system for the state, but you will be on the Texas Resource Review website with quality reviews alongside everyone else. For Math K-8, products that were on the Proclamation 2014, so they are adopted materials, we're going to review some products there, as well as some products that did not go through that process but voluntarily submitted. And any materials that were on the Proclamation 2014 would not have to do a new TEKs correlation, just go through the quality reviews. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then lastly, for our foundational literacy products, we had a reading survey that went out to our districts, and we recorded which products they were requesting review, as well as several publishers submitted their supplement foundational literacy products to be reviewed for quality. For just going over a little bit about some options that are here for publishers, you actually have a lot of opportunities to provide better insight into the products, as well as once a review is done, you have some opportunities or options in which you can ask for some appeals as well as reviews. So prior to the quality review, you can provide an introductory orientation. This is done in a video in which we will have our reviewers watch the video to help them better orient to the product in order for them to feel comfortable when they are beginning to review the product and collect evidence. The second thing that you're able to do is you can submit a checklist of minimum expectations for reviewers. So really this would be provided for our quality review teams to go through and be able to check off that they went into all components for a product sufficiently and were prepared to do the review. And lastly, you are able to do a rubric alignment document. So taking our quality review rubrics and telling us exactly where you feel like strong evidence is for your product for the indicators. Those three that I just discussed will be happening. You will receive some documents in the next month in order to complete and submit those. These are totally optional, so not required from publishers, but strongly encouraged. And then after the quality review, I talked a little bit about this, but there's an appeals process for when you first get the embargoed report prior to us publicly putting on our website. You're able to submit comments, identify errors, and provide a response to the quality review. Publishers have 3 weeks to work on this appeals once they've received their embargoed reports, and then the quality review teams will review what publishers submit. And then the last part here is about revisions. So we do offer an opportunity for publishers to revise materials. In a short term within the same cycle, these would be small revisions that you're able to do that don't impact the TEK scores and only for products that haven't already been on the market. For products that are on, meaning on the state adoption list. Products that are on the state adoption list, it's a little bit more challenging. You do have to submit to have materials edited prior to doing so. And if you have questions about that, we can talk through the process. The other one, the long-term revision, is an option in which you go through the quality review process and you decide you want to make some bigger changes to your product. You can resubmit to a future cycle and we'll review the materials again and be able to publish the new reviews after that time. Again, these are optional pieces, but highly encouraged. And I'll make sure I get to the questions in just a little bit. For the June 2020 review cycle, we do have some upcoming deadlines. This Friday will be the last day to withdraw if you applied. If you are part of a proclamation, you are automatically entered into this as part of the recommendations from the state board. as well as products where we have 10% of districts request review. We have on Friday, there are a few forms that are due that we sent to you. These are more about contributions, just some more of the legal documents. If you have not ever done a TEKs correlation or ELPS correlation, we highly recommend you do a preliminary, meaning you try, I'll talk a little bit about correlations in a minute, but you try doing a correlation, send it to us before you finalize so we can make sure you're doing it correctly and then support you if you need it. That is just a preliminary. It's not all due. It's just doing a few to make sure you're doing it correctly. And then lastly, we're looking to get electronic access. That helps us to identify if you have all the pieces of the product that you want us to review. And then in May, logos and images. We do put a lot of material on our website that helps you to even publicize your product, but helps people connect to what your product is. So we look for your logos, your product images to put on there, as well as any kind of website, social media. And I'll show you that in just a second. On May 15th, we'll have product information due. You should be receiving those documents, or you received those already in the email that was sent last week. And then lastly, your TEKs or TPG and ELPS correlations are due on May 15th if you have not already submitted them as part of Proclamation 2021. And then lastly, June 1st, the optional documents are due. This is the orientation video, the checklist, and the rubric. And we'll be sending out those materials the beginning of next month. And then for print materials for pre-K. So products, we know pre-K materials are a little bit different. Other products are not required to submit print. Print is only if that's the only option you have available. Okay, and then, great, getting some great questions. I'm gonna get there in just a few minutes. The TEKs and TPG and ELPS correlation, I really wanted to just clarify this. We're here to help you. The wonderful review and adoption team liaisons will be there to support, but we provide the blank correlation instrument. It was a spreadsheet sent, and publishers use this to tell us citations of specific examples of content that covers one element of the TEKs, TPG, or ELPS. So you're providing us with where the TEKs or the ELPS correlations are found within your materials on that instrument. That's why we have you do a preliminary one to make sure that you're doing it correctly. For the different contents that we're reviewing, I just wanted to specifically call this out. For pre-K systems, you are required to submit the Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines, the TPG. If you have submitted to Proclamation 2021, I believe those were due today, and so you've already had to send those in. These are just products that were not submitted part of 2021. There are no ELPS correlations, so only the TPG for pre-kindergarten. For math, K-8, TEKs correlations are required. Products on the current state adoption list, we're going to use the published correlations that are already out there from 2014. ELPS correlations are required, but again, if your product is already on the adoption list, we'll use what has already been published. And then lastly, for foundational literacy, the TEKs correlations are required. This is new for everyone because we do not have a state adoption for supplement products. And this is for strand 1 of the TEKs. So it is not for the comprehensive TEKs for grades K through 2. And then the ELPS correlations. I don't believe that we have ELPS for those grade levels, so you may not have to finish those out. I'm getting a message from the team, so I might be following up with that. The June 2020 review cycle, just to give you an update, we anticipate that publishers will get access to their embargoed reviews on the 9th of October. That date might vary just a little bit, but to give you an idea, the reviews start in mid-June and the end of June. October, you receive the embargoed reviews. At the end of October, appeals are done. You'll have 3 weeks to do that. Our final reviews should be done by the 13th, and we will be publishing them all by the end of November, along with any publisher responses. Just quickly before I jump into questions, I did want to share with you, if you've not already been to our website, I do encourage you to go to texasresourcereview.org. And if you look at this website, one of the things that I think is helpful, if you haven't already explored this, is at the top on the navigation bar under About TRR, there is one called Our Rubrics. This will provide you the information about the different, what indicators we're looking at for the different products. And so I would encourage you to look at these rubrics if you haven't already done so, and you can reach out with additional questions. Also on the website, if you go to compare materials and you were to look at any of the grade levels, you would see that we do have some products that have been reviewed in English language arts. It'll help you better understand what your product will look like once it's been reviewed and how information is shared about the different products. So I do encourage you, please, to check out the website if you haven't done so already. And then I'm going to jump into questions, and I have quite a few here. I'm going to pause just a second so I can take a look at them and try to answer them live, but please ask your questions either in the chat, preferably in the question and answer, so I can make sure I can document them. I have a question about pre-K and understanding the adoption list. So pre-K products are being the Proclamation 2021. And so several products submitted to be part of the proclamation, in which they could be on the adopted list, and their materials, there is some additional pieces where you are agreeing to have an 8-year contract and be part of the EMAT system. If you did not already submit to Proclamation 2021, then this review will not put you on the state adoption list. That is a totally, we haven't brought the two processes completely together, and therefore you would not be eligible to be on the state adoption list or your materials in EMAT. However, all the information for both publishers or products that are on the proclamation and new products would all be published side by side in the Texas Resource Review. Another question was, can you put links to a digital platform in the rubric alignment document? Yes, so we'll be changing our rubric alignment document a little bit different than we have in the past, and you would be able to put links if you would like to, but you don't have to. Have we identified publishers about which Proclamation 2014 math products? We have. We are not able to review all the products yet, so we're going to review some as part of the June cycle, and then move forward to work to review remaining products through the fall and next year. So I think that might answer your question. Does it mean that we are going to review it at some point, but we aren't reviewing it right now, if you haven't been already contacted? Yes, so I have some questions about if you've never completed a TEKs or the ELPS alignment, is there a detailed instructional document or samples available? And so we do have a couple things. So there, I will send out a link to some additional information on our instructional materials, our review and adoption TEA site. And then, so you'll have that information. It's a webinar that walks you through it, but also we'll get you in contact with someone who can help support you as you are going through the process. But we'll get you that information as part of a follow-up to this email. And the next day, I will be sending out some additional links. If we have specific questions about the tech specs documents, do I want to hear those here? I might be able to answer some here. If not, you're welcome to email, especially at the Texas Resource Review at tea.texas.gov, and we'll be happy to answer those questions specifically. So I have some questions about, like, should we already have heard about the foundational literacy? If I can't see who submitted that question, if you submitted an application and have not heard back from us, please email me. You can either email me at Texas Resource Review at tea.texas.gov, because we should have gotten in contact with you last week. And so I want to make sure that we're able to answer your questions. The question about how do we adjust the review for software since it's different than printed materials? And so we have reviewed some software products. Here's where I think it's really important. If there are specific things that you're concerned about, or you believe that the reviewers need a stronger orientation, having that option of a video and the checklist is really important. We will only be reviewing the indicators on the quality review rubrics that are published. However, we do want to make sure that we're able to look at your product sufficiently. Not we, the quality reviewers, I'm not part of that process, but making sure that they are familiar with your product. I have a question about foundational literacy, and do we have to meet the ELPS 100% to be considered? Because this is not part of the adoption, our state adoption process, it is not a requirement, because you wouldn't be on the state, there is no state adoption list for foundational literacy. Therefore, what we do is we will publish the percentage on the Texas Resource Review website. So we encourage and hope that you are close to 100% ELPS. However, it is a supplemental program, and so it may not cover all of them. And for K2, I believe that ELPS is not, we may not need to have the ELPS, is what one of the review and adoption director was telling me. So I'll get back to you on that one. Okay. If we're creating a user manual, is that due June 1st? The manual, so a user manual would be really different. We're really just looking for a checklist of what a reviewer needs to go through. I can't guarantee that someone is going to use the manual unless it's part of the teacher resources and part of the materials that you would have, you would want us to review for quality. We might need to connect separately about that, Siobhan. If you have applied, there's some clarity about 424 in that it's the last day to withdraw from the process. If you applied voluntarily and you are not part of the proclamation or the state adoption list, you could change your mind and withdraw by Friday. If you are part of the proclamation or are currently have a product on the state review list, or a district has requested by this 10% rule, then we can review your product still. So the withdrawal is only for voluntary applications. Yep, so the question about do we want alignment to the TEKs breakouts when we submit in our final alignment? Yes, that's for May. So May 15th, the TEKs, TPG, ELPS alignments are due. So there's a question about the appeal process and if a publisher does not agree with it or is unhappy with the final evaluation. Our quality reviews, so we have an independent process and our quality reviewers do have the final decision on the quality reviews. However, we do spend a lot of time looking at the appeals and what the concerns are with the publishers to make sure that we look at the products in the way that maybe you would like us to, the review teams. And so we work with you to do that, to make this process as fair as we possibly can. If you're still unhappy with the reviews, we do still, once the quality reviewers have finished their reviews and we've finalized them, we will publish them. Publishers do have an opportunity though to provide a response, meaning that you can publish your answer to whether you believe that score is matches your product. Happy to talk more one-on-one about that too. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Oh, I'll say I have a question here about the pre-K publishers can submit a video, a checklist of minimum expectations, and the rubric alignment. That's not a manual. Those are some optional pieces that we will be sending you documents that you can complete and send to us, or giving you some guidelines on how to make that checklist. And we'll be getting that to you in the next week. I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes if you have some additional questions. I also will be publishing this webinar and some of the questions and answers that we were able to look at, as well as provide a follow-up email with some of the links I suggested. I have a question about if you've already submitted to the Proclamation 2021, do we submit a separate set of the product components materials for the quality review? We're looking, if you're talking about the actual hard copy physical materials, we're trying to work alongside with the review and adoption team. Given the current situation, we're trying to find the best way to be able to get materials to our quality reviewers plus our state review panel. I'm going to come back to you with that answer. So hold on that. If that's not the question you're asking, please let me know. Yeah, any kind of products that were part of a proclamation on a current state adoption list, or requested review from 10% of districts, we can review those products as part of our legislative rule, our commissioner's rule. The withdraw date really has to do with a product that you voluntarily applied to have reviewed. but also happy to follow up on that specific question. Oh, the question about the affidavit form, if you're talking about the 2021, if you're talking about foundational literacy, if you will, for right now, just put you'll just put 2021 on there for the proclamation. We were leveraging that form from there, but we'll use that date. And then my email, question about my email, I am one of the people that answers the emails for Texas Resource Review at tea.texas.gov. I'll be reviewing those emails. You can email me directly. My name's Melissa. You can just call my name out there in that email, and I'll make sure that I answer you. We're going to also have a follow-up webinar on May 4th that specifically goes over optional items and walking through the checklist, the orientation video, as well as the rubric correlations. You will have those documents by that time, the guidelines for them, but if you're interested, I will also in the follow-up email put a link to the registration for the May 4th webinar for publishers who are interested in having those optional items and want to learn a little bit more about that information. I have a question about, can you link videos of a demo of the product in the correlation document? Not for the TEKs, TPG or ELPS. They actually have to be, if you are submitting just the demo, that's not enough information for us to be able to review. It would have to be for the actual materials. Great. And then the last question is about for foundational literacy. If you are submitting a correlation document for foundational literacy, you're only filling out those TEKs correlations that we sent you. TPG is just for pre-kindergarten, and the foundational literacy is K through 2 products. Well, I certainly appreciate your time today. I'll stay for just a few more minutes if anybody else has any questions. If not, please feel to leave for today. You can reach out at this email for the Texas Resource Review, and we're happy to respond to you. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to working with you.